Good afternoon and welcome to sunny Silverstone. It is time for the British Grand Prix, just 2 weeks on from one of the most dramatic, one of the most emotional MotoGP events we've had in quite a long time. In front of a record crowd, Johann Zarco became the first Frenchman to win his home Grand Prix in the Premier class for over 70 years. Those images, those sights, those sounds of Le Marseillaise ringing around Le Mans, I think will stick with us for a very long time, Lewis. And we come here to Silverstone where over the past decade we've had 10 different winners in a row, a remarkable stat at the British Grand Prix. And looking at the forecast, we could be in for another weekend where we get a surprise result on Sunday.
Yeah, 10 different winners in the last 10 British Grand Prix, and Ducati's unbeaten streak finally ended in the French Grand Prix. So as you say, you can't rule anything out this weekend. We both live in Spain, but I've spent a lot of my recent time here in the UK. The weather for the last 2 or 3 weeks has been absolutely gorgeous here. It's been near enough summer temperatures. We've arrived here at Silverstone. The sun's gone behind the clouds and the rain's rolling in for this weekend. Saturday in particular looks like the worst of the days in terms of the weather this weekend. Sunday could also be affected by the rain. And as we saw in Le Mans, if we get a bit of rain, particularly at the worst possible moment, then it could throw everything on its head. Yeah,
another weekend where the only thing you can do is predict the unpredictable. There's no point trying to make any bold statements at this early juncture with the forecast as it is, and with MotoGP being MotoGP. And speaking of MotoGP being MotoGP, we all left Le Mans on Sunday evening thinking that the headlines would be grabbed by Johann Zarco leading into the British Grand Prix. It was not the case. On Monday afternoon, stories started breaking in the Spanish media that Jorge Martin, the current world champion, is looking for an early exit from his Aprilia contract. Those stories state that allegedly there is a clause in that 2-year deal that Jorge signed at Mugello last year, whereby if he wasn't inside the top 5 after 6 Grand Prix, then he would be allowed to leave for free at the end of 2025. Of course, that sent huge repercussions and shockwaves throughout the paddock. It has dominated talk throughout the paddock from then until now. As a result, Aprilia have made a statement for the very first time this morning. This is the only statement that they will make as well earlier today, saying the contract between Aprilia Racing and Jorge Martin is valid and in effect, and as such it must be respected by both parties until its expiration the end of 2026. Aprilia Racing has honoured in it full within the agreed upon timelines and terms and will continue to do so in the future. Aprilia Racing denies that any negotiations have taken place between the parties to modify the duration of the contract, which remains as originally agreed upon. The team has no comment on matters that do not directly concern it, but expects other teams to refrain from making any kind of offer to riders who are under contract. Such behaviour would, in any case, not be legitimate. The entire team will continue to support Jorge throughout his recovery process, as it always has, and looks forward to seeing him back on track with the RSGP. Firstly, Lewis, what is your take on what we've seen over the past couple of weeks?
I really feel for Aprilia on this one. Of course, from Jorge Martin's point of view, immense sympathy for the situation he's been in this season, defending the World Championship, and you can't really say he's been able to launch any sort of defence of that World Championship with the succession of injuries that he's had this season. But Aprilia, of course, invested a lot of time and effort and, crucially, a lot of money in getting Jorge Martin across to their team for this season, and they haven't really seen the best of him yet, nor has Jorge Martin seen the best of Aprilia yet. So from both sides of it, they could both look at the other and say the lack of competitiveness, the lack of results from Aprilia so far is as much down to the other party as it is to themselves. But I think from Aprilia's point of view, you can understand why they'll be perhaps feeling a little bit sore from that. The statement that you've just read out is essentially two things. It's a "you're staying where you are, Jorge" message to their rider, but it's also a hands-off message to the rest of this MotoGP paddock, because of course if the other factories get wind that Jorge Martin could become available for next season, you'd be crazy not to jump at that.
Yeah, let's look at what we know right now. We know for certain there is factual evidence. A video has been circulating social media. Jorge Martin was in Le Mans. That is definite. Now,
as much as he tried to hide that.
Exactly. He tried to hide. He tried to go incognito, but he was in the paddock on Friday night. Now, Jorge, because of the punctured lung, is unable to fly. So he drove the 11 hours from Andorra to Le Mans and back in the space of 24 hours, a 22-hour round trip. And Aprilia is saying that no negotiations have taken place with Jorge. Unfortunately, I just don't buy that, because Jorge Martin has not done a 22-hour round trip from Andorra to France to say hello to some friends on Friday night. He was there for discussions. We also know from very good sources within the paddock that that clause does exist. There is a clause in the contract that after 6 rounds, Jorge can leave his Aprilia contract 12 months early if he's not inside the top 5. Now, what the Spanish press is stating is that during those conversations in Le Mans, Jorge and his management team, Albert Valera, went to Aprilia and said, given the circumstances, we'll give you grace and allow that period, those 6 race period, to extend from when he returns, which has been mooted, the German Grand Prix, through to, in 6 rounds' time, the San Marino Grand Prix. Reports in the media are saying that Aprilia turned that down and said, stay with us or go. We're not going to change the contract as is. And that's why we're at the position now where there's a real standoff between them. Jorge Martin, Albert Valera and his management team clearly feel that they can exit this contract with Aprilia 12 months earlier than planned. But Aprilia, potentially, given the circumstances of the injury, feel that it is not just for that to be the case. And unfortunately, this looks like being a scenario that is going to drag on for quite some time, and there's no resolution in sight at this current moment.
What's pretty clear is that statement that you saw on screen a moment ago from Aprilia was written very, very carefully, because we're expecting this potentially to go to the lawyers in the future. If both sides dig their heels in, if Jorge Martin is clear in his view that he wants to go, and if Aprilia are clear in their view that they won't let him, this could end up in front of a court later in the season. The statement refers to no negotiations regarding the length of the contract. It's words to that effect. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that there isn't a clause in there that means they could break. The contract ends at the end of 2026. That's not changing. It's whether there are performance clauses in there that allow Jorge to get out. And you have to say as well, in Jorge Martin's defence, I guess, that clause will have been in that contract. That would not have been a surprise to Aprilia. That clause will have been agreed upon when they were negotiating with Jorge Martin. So Aprilia would have been well aware of that clause in that contract, that Jorge Martin could potentially get out early. I guess perhaps in their heart of hearts they would never have imagined that it would ever be exercised, nor would they have expected Jorge to be injured for so long of this season, but expect themselves to be so relatively uncompetitive. And I guess a point that will be thrown further down the line when Jorge Martin, I guess inevitably, is going to return at some point from his injury. He's going to want to race again later this season. What kind of relationship is going to be existing with that Aprilia box when Jorge Martin does return to it?
That, for me, is the massive point. I said on social media, as soon as the news broke, how on earth can you go about repairing this relationship now?
He's given them a vote of no confidence.
He's basically said, I don't want to be with you next year. And it's going to go through a very messy situation, whatever the outcome is. Right now, I do not see how Jorge Martin can stay at Aprilia next year. The marriage is broken. Pecco Bagnaia said earlier when he was asked about it, in his opinion, and I can understand his opinion as well, when you sign a contract, you stick to it. It's a marriage. And you've got to, through the good times, through the bad times, you've got to work through it. You've got to try and make it happen. Jorge Martin is Aprilia's biggest financial investment that the company has ever made. And he's not completed a single Grand Prix yet, and he wants out. I can understand why Massimo Rivola feels that he's been stabbed in the back, because they have done so much for Jorge to bring him on side, to fight his corner despite the crashes in Sepang, despite the training crash that put him out on the eve of the opening round of the year. And despite all of that, he comes to him in Le Mans and says, I want to leave at the end of the year. I mean, I can understand Pecco Bagnaia's point of view, and the hot rumour is that it is Honda that are waiting in the wings. And right now, I'd love to know your opinion. Can you see Jorge remaining in black in 2026? For me, the marriage, the relationship, seems like it is a point where it just cannot be repaired.
Yeah, the bridges have been burnt, it feels like, between Jorge Martin and Aprilia, and it's going to take an awful lot of hard work and an awful lot of mediation, I guess, to build that once again. Aprilia, I guess, would say that our biggest performance part is Jorge Martin. He's the source of our success or lack of it this season, because he's unfortunately been injured. Not that you can blame that necessarily on Jorge Martin. He's been phenomenally unlucky. The injury that he sustained in Qatar, of course, was just a freak incident where he was clipped by a rider following him. Honda, of course, have made great strides this season. They won the last Grand Prix, even if that was weather-assisted. So you can certainly understand why riders will be looking in their direction and seeing a potential future with them, because we know they're going to throw everything at it to try and get themselves competitive again. What I think this last 2 weeks has shown us is that whatever sentiment is involved in motorcycle racing, Grand Prix motorcycle racing is a ruthless business. And Jorge Martin, having tasted it last year, having won the World Championship last season, he only wants to do one more thing in the future, and that is win. And perhaps he's already decided that winning at Aprilia isn't viable.
Yeah, it's dog eat dog, and I can understand Jorge Martin's point of view as well, that you've got to look after your own personal self-interest. At the end of the day, you're in it for yourself out there, and if he doesn't see a route to success with Aprilia after the 3 months, the one Grand Prix, half a Grand Prix that he's done with them, then you can understand him making that decision.
And I reiterate again, if that clause was in that contract, as we understand it was, Aprilia will have been as aware of that as Jorge was.
There's 2 signatures on the bottom of the contract,
yeah.
Jorge Martin and Massimo Rivola, so they will have been aware of it. And obviously it's blown the rider market that we thought was going to be quite calm and quiet this year completely into disarray. We were speaking on Sunday night about the obvious route for Johann Zarco into the factory Honda squad, given the success that he's made, but now it looks likely that he'll potentially stay at LCR, with Jorge Martin maybe moving to Honda. Will Ayagura then get promoted up? There's continual talk that Pedro Acosta is still looking for a way out, and maybe he might end up at Ducati. Could he be an option for Aprilia? You would think not. He's got the same manager as Jorge Martin. I mean, we really do not know who is going to be on what bike next year. It does seem that even those riders with 2026 contracts will have clauses in there to maybe work their way out of it. It's thrown everything into disarray.
Well, we saw a couple of years ago in the rider market that the domino to fall was Marc Marquez's decision. Last year, the big domino was who Ducati were going to sign as their second factory rider alongside Pecco Bagnaia, and then all the pieces fell into place quite literally from there, when Aprilia, of course, got ahead of Ducati and announced Jorge Martin, ironically, ahead of Bagnaia's teammate being announced for this season. Once again, it's Jorge Martin who's central to all this, and you feel that if you're Honda, Jorge Martin is worth waiting for. He's worth hanging your hat on. If they do genuinely feel that there is a possibility of getting Jorge Martin into their factory team for next season, I think they're going to wait as long as it has to be waited to try and get Jorge Martin in that team. I guess the riders that then perhaps fall on the wrong side of that are Joan Mir, Luca Marini, and of course Johann Zarco, who I don't think there's any doubt that Johann Zarco is going to be on a Honda next season. We just don't know which team that's going to be in. But I guess Luca Marini and Joan Mir potentially will be sitting a little uncomfortably and following this Jorge Martin situation closely, because it could impact whether either of them are still at Honda next year. Absolutely.
Now, one man who helped Jorge Martin make the move to Aprilia last year was Aleix Espargaro. He's wildcarding this weekend, of course, now in Honda colours. So is he doing it all over again 12 months later? Is Aleix Espargaro trying to lure Jorge Martin to Honda with him? Well, he spoke to us earlier, and here's what he had to say.
We have to speak about Jorge's situation. We know how super close you are. What can you tell us, if anything, from your point of view that you know about the situation?
Yeah, it's difficult, from me to tell you anything, because you know how close I am to Jorge. Jorge didn't speak yet, so I can't do it. But the only thing that I can tell you is that I push a lot last season to bring Jorge to Aprilia. My dream, my desire was to see him winning with my old bike, let's say like this. And I also push Aprilia management, to offer a good contract to Jorge. So I try my best to bring him to Aprilia, but I never did the same to bring him to Honda. Everybody in this paddock wants Jorge, one of the best riders with an amazing talent. But yeah, we have to respect what he decides. But from my side, I never did what I did in Aprilia at that time.
I guess you can see it from both manufacturer and rider perspective. You've been around a long time. I guess you can see both sides of the story.
Yeah, I understand. Obviously, it's what the only thing that I can tell you is that what Jorge lives the last 2-3 months was a nightmare, a completely roller coaster. So you if you put on his place, you know it's very difficult to understand what you will decide, what you will do. It's very difficult what Jorge is living. So we have to respect. Obviously, if there is a contract, if there is a clause and he wants to move, he's in his right. If there is not, Aprilia is in his right. But obviously, the feelings of Jorge, just Jorge has it, and we have to respect it.
Thank you, Aleix. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there we go, the thoughts of Aleix Espargaro on the potential move of Jorge Martin a year early to Honda for 2026. As we said, it's a story that's going to rumble on for the weeks and months that follow here in MotoGP, and of course we'll keep you right up to date with everything that happens. We'll switch our attention to current matters and what happened last time out at Le Mans. How could we forget that victory for Johann Zarco, as you said, stopping Ducati's streak, meaning that they remain on 22 consecutive tie-in Honda for the most in MotoGP history. In the end, it was a magnificent ride from Johann, and justly deserved given the effort, the performances he's been putting in over the past 18 months.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have the job we do, to be able to follow this great World Championship across the world, but that was a genuine I was there kind of moment, wasn't it? One of those moments that you're privileged to be a part of, whether it be as a fan, as a broadcaster, or indeed as a rider or a team manager. Johann Zarco producing one of three great victories in MotoGP, a decision to start on wet tyres, which of course he benefited from in full, but even once he'd made that decision and took the lead, he was the fastest rider on the wet tyres. Marc Marquez could have chased him, couldn't chase him in the end, and Johann Zarco won by 20 seconds in the end. A comfortable victory. And those scenes from pretty much the last lap onwards, as our guest here, Lucio Cecchinello, could barely watch on the pit wall. The noise from the grandstands, those moments will live with me for a long time.
Yeah, it was a special Sunday afternoon in MotoGP, and a man that I'm sure is still smiling as a result of it, as you said, Lewis, is Lucio Cecchinello, team boss. Lucio, I saw a photo on Sunday night of your mobile phone with, it was about 9 weather apps, which came in quite handy, and about 500 WhatsApp messages as well. Have you managed to respond to all of them?
700.
700.
Yeah. The last Sunday, I spent the whole morning trying to send a lot of art and to send some answer to the most important people, but I was very pleased, of course.
700 WhatsApp messages. Wow, a busy Sunday for you. 2 weeks on, I mean, it's always the case in MotoGP. You have an amazing day like that, and suddenly you have no time to enjoy. You've got to concentrate on the next Grand Prix. But what is the energy like in the team this morning when you arrived at the circuit after that victory?
Of course, we are here. We are all pleased with the work we have done, especially in Le Mans. But we know that we have to be back on the planet Earth, because we are still a lot of work to do to improve our bike. The condition, as we know, in Le Mans was particularly, let's say, unusual. On the dry condition, we need definitely to improve our bike, and there are a lot of work to be done still. So keep the feet in the ground and work on.
How valuable was Johann's experience in Le Mans a couple of weeks ago? Of course, very confusing situation for everybody. Some riders changed bikes 2 or 3 times during the race, but clear thinking and the experience of knowing the various scenarios and making the right decision from Johann.
I think that you know, as a team we played very well, because we spoke with him before the race, and straight before he put the helmet on, we showed the latest weather condition and weather forecast, and then we said to him that definitely there will be some rain coming. He was doing good because he wasn't influenced by the other rider coming to the pit. He stick with you know, with the team, let's say, wish. And then what, as you said, made the difference is exactly his experience to manage the wet tire in a pretty dry condition without destroying the tire, without to overheat the tire, and being able to save the tire for the end of the race.
Now you have your pilot's license, am I right, Lucio? Yeah. So as a result, you've got access, or you know what the best weather apps are. So is that your secret weapon, do you think? And if so, how did it help for you to know exactly what was happening?
As you know, there are a lot of radar weather apps. I am using one weather app that aircraft pilot are using by subscriptions. I'm not going to tell which ride
Money well
I'm
spent.
using, but I want to say that it's pretty easy for me to understand because I use on a weekly basis to travel to the race meetings, so I can better understand the evolution of the weather, and yeah. That was maybe a little bit helpful.
So what's it telling you for this weekend then? The forecast for Saturday in particular looks pretty dodgy. Sunday may be a little bit better, but what's the Lucio forecast telling us?
If I'm going to tell you, I have to kill you.
We'll keep it a secret. Just finally, before we let you go, Lucio, we've been speaking so often, nearly every weekend I come to find you just for an update on Johann's situation. The talks are ongoing. On Sunday, I thought a victory would maybe help his chances to go to the factory team, and then some big news broke on Monday, and I thought, oh, maybe he's going to stay with LCR. What is the latest? How do you rate Johann's chances of remaining with you next year right now?
I respect a lot HRC with all the support they are doing and the collaboration, the strong collaboration, strict collaboration we have with them. I believe that their wish is to keep Zarco on the LCR environment, because everything is well already settled, and then it's functioning pretty well. I believe that their own priority probably is to look for some other solution. But at the very end, the reality is that they will have the final word. So I keep my finger crossed to keep continuing to work with Johann, but I still don't know 100%.
Well, it was a special weekend last time out. Let's hope it's another one. And I know on Sunday who I'm coming to find before the race to work out what's going to happen weather-wise. Lucio, great to see you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you so much.
There we go. Great to chat with Lucio Cecchinello, who he's not giving his secrets away, is he?
No. He's back to full strength though this weekend. We should also point out Lucio Cecchinello, Somkiat Chandra, who missed the French Grand Prix due to arm pump surgery, is back with us this weekend, alongside Johann Zarco, who will, I think, be liking the look of that weather forecast that Lucio is keeping very much to himself.
Absolutely. Right, let's speak about the runners and riders, the contenders this weekend. First, though, nightmare weekend last time out for the former world champion Pecco Bagnaia. The first time in his MotoGP career that he's failed to score points on Saturday and Sunday. So how is the Italian feeling ahead of the weekend? Here's what he had to say earlier today.
Pecco, great to see you here at Silverstone. I want to talk about a couple of comments you made in between Le Mans and here in the Go Free series about change of riding style and trying to get a little bit more out of the Ducati package. Just elaborate a little bit on that, because your comments after Le Mans as well, not particularly positive, I suppose, after the first 6 rounds of the season.
Absolutely, after Le Mans was the worst moment right now, because I didn't take any point, and till Saturday morning everything was fine, but then everything becomes a nightmare. So it's true that right now I'm struggling with this bike. The front of the bike is not helping me. I need much more feeling from it, and we are trying to solve the problem. We know that I know perfectly that Ducati is working hard to give to me what I want, because they also know that if I can have this feeling, I can fight for the wins, and they need it. So we will try, continue working like we are doing, and trying to solve the problems. And apart that, I'm always super ready to fight and to work on the results.
About the riding style, is it looking towards something more Mark is doing, or you're evolving your own style? How is it unfolding?
I'm doing my style. I'm doing my style because Mark is always adapting well to the situations. It's true that also him with these new bikes start to feel some limits, and we have to solve the problems for both. But I want to continue with my style and try to make the bike adapt to me.
Silverstone, it's always unpredictable, much like the British weather. We've had 10 different winners here in the last 10 years. We've had 4 different winners in the last 4 Grand Prix of 2025. What can we expect this weekend?
Let's see. I hope that I will finish this rule. I want to win it again. It's true that the condition will be tricky for the temperatures and also for the forecast that are saying that Saturday maybe could rain. But let's see. It's very cold. We have to be prepared with everything and do a good work with all the tires to understand which one is better.
We'll look forward to it. Thanks, Pecco.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pecco Bagnaia, of course, one of those 10 winners over the last 10 years, but there's quite a few of them on the grid. Alex Rins, Maverick Viñales, Marc Marquez, Aleix Espargaro, Enea Bastianini. There's a fair few of them that have tasted success here at Silverstone down the years. At this current moment, who are the names we should be looking out for, Lewis? We've only got 3 minutes, by the way. We haven't got half an hour, which I'm giving you a tricky job there.
Yeah, well, you'd have to say Ducati, of course, even with their losing streak or their winning streak finally being ended in Le Mans, a clear favourite. Marc Marquez has, unusually I guess for him, gone through a bit of a barren spell. Of course, he's won every single Saturday sprint we've had so far this season. I guess the biggest threat to that winning streak could come this weekend if we have a wet sprint. But Marc Marquez, I guess, will be stung by, of course, the victories that he, I guess, felt he lost in Austin and in Jerez, and also, I guess, second maybe felt like a win for him in Le Mans, given the championship situation, given that his nearest title rivals, both Alex Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, scored nothing that afternoon. So Marc Marquez, I'm sure, will want to do some winning once again. He is one of those many different winners here, as you mentioned, although the last and the only one of those came 11 years ago. So Marc Marquez will, I no doubt, want to end that this weekend. But I guess the biggest double six that could be thrown into all of that, which could mix things up, is the rain on Saturday. Not only could that impact the sprint, but of course it could impact the grid as well.
Yeah, of course. It's going to be a fascinating weekend. You do feel after that championship ride from Marc last time out, and that's what it was as well. He knew that was an occasion where it was important to see the checkered flag and pick up valuable points.
Caged himself against Alex, didn't he?
Exactly. And he's now got that buffer where he can go all in. He can roll the dice on Sunday and get that first Sunday victory for quite some time. Another name we need to be looking out for, there was heartbreak in France for him. Fabio Quartararo will miss the opening 10 minutes of the first session of the weekend tomorrow, by the way, after a bit of a disagreement with the marshals. I'm sure we'll explain that in full during tomorrow's opening session of the weekend. But Fabio, another rider we didn't mention, but he's had success here as well. And you feel that big result, that victory on a Saturday or a Sunday isn't too far away. And this is a place that should suit the Yamaha and him as well.
2021, Fabio Quartararo won the British Grand Prix on his way to the World Championship. It was pretty much that victory that secured him the World Championship to all intents and purposes. And as you say, this kind of layout with its long, fast corners, you feel it could well be tailor-made for the Yamaha. Of course, his qualifying record in recent times has been extraordinary, back-to-back pole positions in Jerez and at Le Mans. So Quartararo, I guess, who's about to come past us now, you'll just see him disappearing over to Jack's shoulder there. Quartararo, I guess, will be one of those perhaps nervously looking at the weather forecast. He will not want it wet on Saturday, because he did admit on Sunday in Le Mans, particularly in the warm-up, it was a bit of a disaster for him in those wet conditions. So Quartararo will want dry weather. But there's no question that the progress that Yamaha are making at the moment is just being underlined. It's being confirmed at every Grand Prix weekend we go to. They are expecting tougher tests to come, particularly at the likes of Aragon in a couple of weeks' time. Potentially they may struggle. Mugello may also be a struggle, because it's certainly going to test their new engine that they brought to Le Mans and had some great results from. But Quartararo's record around here is very, very good. And of course, Yamaha have got two riders within their team, both Quartararo and Alex Rins, who are very strong here. Yeah, absolutely. One rider I want to mention as well that I think has got a great chance here, has been on the podium here for three different factories, Aprilia, Yamaha, and Suzuki, of course, took his very first Grand Prix win here, is Maverick Viñales. I think he's one rider that's got a great chance this weekend if it stays dry and things can go his way. There's no question that he's been KTM's leading challenger in recent races. Of course, he wasn't the leading KTM over the line in Le Mans. Pedro Acosta got the better of him in those wet conditions, but Viñales has been superb in recent times. Of course, that initial process where he was trying to understand the KTM and its very unique method of getting a fast lap time out of it, it doesn't really ride like any other motorcycle on the grid. Viñales has got his head around that now, and he's kind of showing the likes of Pedro Acosta, Brad Binder and Enea Bastianini the way on that KTM. We haven't really seen this kind of run from Vinales. We haven't seen Pedro Acosta being outpaced to this extent by another KTM rider since he joined the MotoGP factory team at the start of last season, so it's certainly going to be keeping Pedro Acosta on his toes. We'll be hearing from him shortly. Vinales, though, as you say, yeah, he'll fancy his chances. Another name I'd throw into there too, Alex Marquez, who of course will be smarting from that crash, or the pair of crashes in Le Mans. He does have a sprint win around here in wet conditions.
And his teammate as well, Fermin Aldeguer. This is his last opportunity to become the youngest ever winner of a MotoGP race, and
his first Moto2 win did come here as well.
His Moto2 win came here. He was the fastest man on track in the wet on Sunday, last time out in Le Mans in those closing stages, was on the podium in the sprint as well. It's not out of the question that we might see Fermin challenging at the front as well. As ever in MotoGP, there are a whole host of names that can challenge for victory this weekend. The weather is going to be a real gamble, and Sunday is a race that you do not want to miss. Right, let's officially kick off the British Grand Prix with our pre-event press conference. The World Championship leader, Marc Marquez, joined by Johann Zarco and Pedro Acosta.